Okay, back at doing this. I know there were a few distractions there along the way. I'm looking at you, Renji. Oh, I'm Renji Abarai. I didn't get a Zanpakuto discussion video. I need one. Alright, fine, Renji, but we gotta get through these Fullbringer series, alright? There's other stuff going on right now. A lot of people are probably gonna ask me, Tekking, are you going to review Burn the Witch? Because the new Burn the Witch limited run manga just started last Sunday. I've read the first chapter as well as the pilot, of course, that came out a few years ago. I am going to probably talk about that this coming Sunday, because there's no One Piece chapter this Sunday, so look forward to that on Sunday. I don't know if it'll be like a typical review, or if it'll just be me like talking about it in like this kind of style. I'm not really sure yet, but it's a limited run manga. It's only about, I think, 4 chapters we're going to get, and we just got the first one. So I really liked it though, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. But today, we are talking about the leader of Execution, the founder of Execution, really, his master Machiavellian schemes, luring Ichigo into their midst to steal his power to get his power back with skull power. Yo! We are, of course, talking about Ginjou Kugo. And you know what? I gotta say, this guy's got style. I mean, I gotta admit. I mean, especially coming off of Aizen. Alright, because I don't know how many of you guys were reading Bleach back then when, you know, the Fake Karakura Town arc ended, because that was a long arc. You know, it was a long time we were in Fake Karakura Town. And then we had this big epic climax. You know, Aizen, who was set up as the main villain of the entire story. Ichigo's, you know, accessing powers in dimensions beyond even Aizen could possibly fathom. You know, and Uehara, you know, Aizen's like, I am 3rd dimension, while all you other peons are 2nd dimension. Ichigo's like, I'm 4th dimension. Then Aizen's like, well, I'm 5th dimension. Ichigo's, you know, I am infinity dimensions, Mugetsu, Shing, and then slices Aizen down. Aizen gets sealed, gets thrown in Mugen. Well, Ichigo lost his powers. That kinda sucks in hindsight, but you know, that's how Ichigo was at the beginning of the story, right? Except he can't see spirits now. Honestly, I'm saying it right here. I mean, there's a lot of people that do think that, you know, Bleach should have just ended right then and there with Aizen being defeated, Ichigo losing his powers, but still being a good person. You know, even without his powers, he's still going to protect those that are close to him, which is, of course, the core of Ichigo's character. But, of course, Bleach did not end at that point. That led into the Fullbringer arc, where we get introduced to this fine man, this gentleman, really. Many people might be asking, you know, well, what about all the things about Ginjou's character that are revealed in the Can't For Your Own World light novel? Now, of course, I've only read the first edition of this. There's 3 in total, and the other 2 are not out in English yet, so I haven't read those, only read summaries. Last time we did one of these, I think it was Riruka's video, when I decided I was going to do Ginjou, I asked people to just give me, like, a quick summary, like a bulleted point list of, like, the most important stuff involving Ginjou from the Can't For Your Own World light novels. I will tackle that stuff at the end, because that involves, like, spoilers involving the light novels, in case you don't want to, like, get spoiled for that, you just want to read the light novels on your own. That's fine. I think I might even break it up in, like, because YouTube has those new, like, chapter things. So we'll be talking just about Ginjou's character in the Fullbringer arc and in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, just the stuff in the canon of the manga. And at the very end, I'll pull up that little bulleted point list that a few of my fans have sent me, and we'll go over that stuff. So yeah, that's probably how I'm going to structure this. Okay, so Ginjou, you know, first off, just, you know, him being the next antagonist after Aizen, Kubo had to get a little bit of clever here, because it's like, okay, we just had Aizen. Aizen literally ascended to god status. He had the freaking Hogyoku and everything. If I'm going to continue Bleach, if we're going to keep this going, there has to be a new antagonist in the following arc that Ichigo has to go up against. The arc where Ichigo has to struggle with not having his Shinigami powers, eventually getting his powers back and everything. You know, I got to do this a little bit different. I can't just have this, like, you know, guy who's walking down the street and just like, Ichigo, I am your new enemy! And Ichigo's like, ah! And then they start fighting. You know, and it's like, oh, I have to defeat this guy, I gotta get my powers back, or anything like that. So, I kind of like the way Kubo handled this, especially in Ginjou's first introduction. I thought it was very intimidating. Actually, both of his introductions, because the first time we get introduced to Ginjou is at the very end of the first chapter of the Fullbringer arc, or the Lost Agent arc, I think is the official name for it, but most people just call it the Fullbringer arc. It's when, you know, Ichigo beats up, like a robber, grabs this guy's bag that he stole, gives it back to the dude, its rightful owner, and it's Ginjou. And at the, you know, he's like, oh, thank you so much, young man, for saving my bag. And Ichigo's like, yeah, no problem, sir. So that's Ichigo being a good citizen, you know, helping people out in need. And then at the very end of that chapter, you know, at first Ginjou seems like really nice, and he's just like, oh, thank you so much, son. Oh, man, that's great. Thank you. Oh, yeah, everything's in here. We're good. And then as Ichigo turns and walks away with his friends, you see the Shinigami Combat Pass fall out of Ginjou's bag, and then you just see him strike this really intimidating glare. I'm like, oh, so that's Ichigo Kurosaki, huh? And that's like, okay, he's the villain. But is he? That's the thing. You're questioning this for a little while. He looks like a villain. He's got slicked back hair. Like Aizen, therefore, he's like, well, Aizen had slick back hair, and this guy has slick back hair. His is even longer than Aizen's, so, yeah, he might very well be the villain, but we just don't know yet. There was actually a few red herrings earlier on in this arc that, going back and rereading it, I've seen Kubo planted a few things to make us think that, like, where's this arc going? Remember when Ginjou made his first proper introduction to Ichigo when he arrived at Unagi's little shop there, and he goes in, and he's like, oh, you want some ramen? And he just brings like a bowl of ramen with him, you know, with the cellophane on top. Want some ramen? That's kind of okay. Is he the villain though? You know, he has slicked back hair like Aizen, but Aizen never offered anybody ramen. I think he even offers Ichigo some chocolate at some point. You know, did Aizen ever offer Ichigo chocolate? I don't think that ever happened in the series. Maybe it happened in one of the novels. I don't know. So who is this guy, right? He walks in and he lays down a picture of Isshin Kurosaki, so Ichigo's dad, and he's like, oh, I hear this Unagi shop is like, you know, you'll do whatever, you know, people come to with like odd jobs and stuff. Well, I have an odd job for you. I want you to follow this man around and tell me everything that you can find out about him. And Ichigo's looking at him. He's like, well, I could tell you everything you need to know, because guess what? This is my dad. And he's just like, oh, really? So that's like a bit of a red herring earlier on in this arc. We're like, oh, is Isshin Kurosaki? Is that going to be like the main focus of this story arc? Like Ichigo's dad being a Shinigami, that's going to be brought to the forefront now? Makes sense, because just in the last arc, we had the whole thing with, you know, Isshin revealing himself. He's like, by the way, Ichigo, your dad's a Shinigami. And be like, what? You know, so we thought, oh, all right, so this would be a good stepping stone after that, see what's going to happen there. But no, that's essentially a red herring. Isshin really doesn't do anything crazy during this arc, not until the very end, and even then, he doesn't really participate much in anything. He just kind of helps Uehara out with, like, the soul sword and, like, returning Ichigo's powers, and he's there. It's just he doesn't do much. So that's like, oh, okay, what's this Ginjou guy, though? What's he want with Isshin, all right? But no, that was merely just to get Ichigo's attention, to let him know of just, like, hey, I'm not just some random guy. I know all this. I know Soul Society, Hueco Hollows, Shinigami, Zanpakuto, you defeated Aizen, like, you lost your powers, Quincy's, I get all this shit, alright? I'm just wanting to get your attention here so you pay attention to me, right? So you don't just think I'm some random dude, right? And so Ichigo's like, alright, well, what's going on here? And this is added a little bit more in the anime. There's a few more scenes in the anime that shows, like, there was one scene where Ichigo gets attacked by a hollow, or one of his friends, like Mizuru or Keigo, gets attacked by a hollow, and then Ichigo can't handle it, obviously, because he doesn't have powers, and so there's no other Shinigami around, and then Ginjou shows up using his Fullbring, which is Cross of Scaffold. He uses that with the pendant, the cross necklace. He activates that, and it becomes Cross of Scaffold! This is not really Cross of Scaffold, this is Yoru, but it also has a cross-based shape, so I figured it close enough, right? The real Cross of Scaffold is more of a broadsword, like a claymore kind of deal, and right where this spot is actually has a big gap with another handle, so the way that this is not sharp, so when I grab it, don't be afraid. But the way that Ginjou will handle it is like one arm on the hilt here, like the traditional hilt, and then there's like another tiny hilt inside of this, and he'll grab onto this, and then he just swings it really hard, and like a giant energy spear spike thing comes out of it with his Ryatsu, and he just whoosh, and just basically destroys. It's like Getsuga Tensho, except it's more of a close-range Getsuga. It's kind of similar to that one time Ichigo combined his Getsuga with Tensa when he was fighting Ukiura. He didn't release it, he just stored it in the blade to augment his sword swings. It's kind of like that with Cross of Scaffold, just a really, really, you know, large amount of Ryatsus pouring off of it to increase the range of the sword and the overall destructive power. So that was scenes, I think, that was added in the anime. That wasn't in the manga. So just a few couple scenes to see what Ginjou's really capable of. He is a very, he's a very capable fighter, is what I'm trying to say, right? Okay, so he's not just some random guy that's messing with Ichigo just for the fun of it. No, that's more like Tsukishima. But anyway, no. So he explains to him, he's like, all right, tell you what, you know, here's my card, gives him the execution card. He's like, here's my card. I just want to let you know that we're an organization and we all have very weird powers and we're interested in you getting your powers back. So if you want your Shinigami powers back, give me a call. And then Ginjou just kind of leaves. And so he's not pushing him into anything, but you can tell he's like leading Ichigo. He's like, okay, Ichigo's the kind of guy, I can't just go right up to him and say, Ichigo, you want your powers back? All right, let's go. We have a group that meets every Friday at 5 o'clock. You know, so he's like, hey, look, I'm just saying, you know, here's my card. Call me. Kind of knowing, I think, at this point also, and they just started their surveillance over Ichigo recently, but Tsukishima and Ginjou have been watching Ichigo for a little while there, so they think they started to realize, like, Ichigo, you know, on the surface, he might, like, act like he's okay with this, but, you know, if situations happen, like, for example, if Uryu, one of his friends, were to be attacked, then Ichigo's gonna start thinking, like, man, if I only had my powers, I would be able to protect my friends, so kind of spurring that along, and one of the first things that happen in this arc is, you know, Uryu was attacked and rendered into the hospital. We originally assumed it was Tsukishima that sliced down Uryu, but we later find out by the end of the arc that it was actually Ginjou the whole time, and so that was kind of like the impetus for this, like, okay, step 1, you know, observe Ichigo. Step 2, let's slice down one of his friends. Step 3, he starts thinking about getting his powers back. Step 4, you know, you do the mind wipe thing or the mind altering thing with me, Tsukishima, and then you keep your distance, and then me and the rest of Execution are going to approach Ichigo, get him to come over to our side, and then everything will be, that's how they're going to do this. So they were intelligent on how they approached Ichigo, and it also goes into the whole misdirection thing, where for the majority of this arc, we thought it was Tsukishima as the main mastermind, and he was one of them, he just wasn't the main mastermind, right? So, essentially, really, it was all of Execution that was really the mastermind beyond this. It wasn't like, you know, Yukio or Riruka didn't know what was going on. They all came up with this plan together, because Ginjou was essentially their leader. He's the one that first found Tsukishima when he was still Substitute Shinigami, when Ginjou was one, and then after that point, when he defected, they started building up Execution. So they've been together for quite a few number of years now, you know, doing the Execution thing, building everything up, and yeah, Ginjou was member number 1, so that's where that goes right there. And then they found out about Ichigo losing his powers, and they're like, we can make this work. We can make this work. So, because Ichigo just continuously feels like despair because of his lack of power, he finally decides that I'm gonna call this number. So he calls Ginjou after he wades through like the 5 different like sub-menus, like, welcome to Execution. Please hang up, connect again for 5 seconds, hang up, call again, wait 7 seconds, press 4, disconnect. You know, after waiting through the 15... What is your preference of continent? What geography is everything. What freaking question is that? Australia, I guess? Is like, you know, so he wades through that. Eventually Ginjou connects. He's like, oh, hey there, Ichigo. Fancy hearing from you. And he's like, all right, yeah, I'll listen. I'll hear you out. I'll at least hear your sales pitch. Where am I meeting you? He's like, yeah, all right, come on down, you know, town over, I'll show you where it's at. So that's where Ichigo goes in the Execution headquarters. And this actually led into a very interesting part of the arc, an interesting chapter. I think it was called The Soul Pantheon, something like that, The Soul Pantheon or something, where Ginjou sits Ichigo down, and he explains to him that, not just, like, he explains the concept of Fullbring, but he starts with a very interesting concept of, like, everything has a soul in this world, like everything. Like, if you just thought that souls were only something that lived inside humans or animals or things that we typically regard as like living things, or like plants maybe, no, literally everything has a soul. And Ginjou explains just as like, you know, we as Fullbringers can modify the soul of objects. So we can modify the soul of concrete to make it more elastic, so we can jump higher. We can modify the air so we can fly, essentially, like use Geppo essentially from One Piece. You know, when someone is like really good at playing an instrument like a trumpet or something, that's kind of understood as like you're understanding that object's soul to play it really well. So that's kind of how he explains the whole concept of like souls in general, and he even uses this power to like drink alcohol. He's like, I can just usually, you know, pour my soul into this drink and I can like drink the whiskey that way. So that was a really interesting concept. You know, beyond this arc, there's not really a lot of other moments in Bleach where this concept really comes up. I mean, obviously in the Soul Society, everything is made out of, like, those spiritons, like reishi, so, you know, like, they can break it apart and stuff like that, but even in the living world where things are made out of, like, even solid matter, like, everything has a soul. Of course, Barry has a soul, but this coaster has a soul. This plastic skull has a soul. This pillow has a soul. You know, if I was a Fullbringer, I could modify the fluffy factor of this pillow, you know what I mean? Like, that's pretty damn cool. cool, right? And Ginjou takes it to one step further. He's like, okay, but we, as Fullbringers, basically the deal with that was that when we were in our mother's womb, our mothers were attacked by hollows, which resulted in us getting our powers, which are kind of like related to hollow-based powers when we were born. We trained with these powers our entire lives, and now beyond just, you know, manipulating the souls of objects, we can take objects that we're really attached to, and we can kind of bring out their full potential. Essentially, what Fullbring is at the end of the day, it's allowing you to modify matter and change it around to your liking, to any kind of feature or function that you desire. So in the case with Ginjou, he has a cross pendant. He literally pours his reishi into the cross pendant. He makes it way bigger for one, so he's adding a lot more matter to it, and he's also changing the shape and structure of it into a sword, and he's also using his reishi to create like a giant sword laser attack, you know, so that's what he can do. Of course, there's other Fullbrings that are less about modifying objects and more about effects, like for example, Giriko Kutsuzawa's Timer Tells no Laizu, which allows him to use his pocket watch, and he can like set timers on various things, so it's more of an ambiguous concept, not like a hardcore, like he's not like summoning a physical thing. Riruka's involves physical things, but it's like sending objects or other people into those physical things. So it's interesting how Fullbring could really develop and all that stuff. And yes, I know, in the Can't Fear Your Own World novel, we also find out really what Fullbring really is. That explanation that Ginjou gave, which like, you know, oh, we were attacked by hollows when we were on our mother's wombs, and that's how we got the powers. That's not... That's accurate. It's just, it's like half accurate. We'll get more into that at the very end of the video. The big question is, of course, okay, Ichigo's like, this is fine and dandy, you know, soul, pantheon, and everything like that. You drank booze, you know, without touching it. You must, good magic trick. Why am I here? Why are you guys interested in me getting my powers back? You haven't explained that. And Ginjou explains, he's like, oh, well, you see, there was a situation here where, you know, we actually don't like our powers, you know, like we're not happy being this, okay? And this is also probably maybe modified with Tsukishima's powers a little bit there, but he's like, we don't want to have our powers. We want to just be normal humans, okay? There is a way that it might be feasible to get rid of our powers, and that's transferring the Fullbring into a substitute Shinigami, which we attempted to do before. And then he pulls out the combat pass, and he's like, oh yeah, this belonged to the former Shinigami, but it didn't work out too well. But Ichigo, we hear you're a former Shinigami, and we also hear you had hollow powers. This might actually work with you, because if this actually works out, if you can learn Fullbring, if you can get your powers back, then we can transfer our Fullbring into you get stronger, you already had hollow powers in you, so that means that it should be compatible, we go back to being normal humans, everybody's happy, right? Plus, you get to hang out in this awesome, you know, little lounge area we have set up. Giriko's got all the drinks on tap. Yukio, you would let him play your PSP? No, not really. Okay, well, you can't play Yukio's PSP. But we have pinball. We got pinball, Ichigo. Come on, let's do this. So Ichigo, he thinks about it a little bit. He mulls it over, and he's like, okay, you know what? Sure. And I'm sure Ichigo, even at this, because Ichigo's not an idiot. You know, Ichigo's probably like, alright, you might be not telling me everything, but it is unquestionable you have these powers. You have powers that are unlike Quincy powers, unlike Shinigami powers. I think Ichigo would be able to realize they're more... And then Chad shows up, and then Chad also explains that his, you know, brazo izquierdo del diablo, or... No, that's I said... Did I say right hand of the devil just now? I don't know, but brazo izquierdo el gigante, or something. I didn't do very... I got like a D in Spanish in high school, alright? But at any rate, you know, his arms abilities, you know, that's a Fullbring. And Chad comes over, and he's friends of Ichigo, so he's like, oh yeah, no, they're actually what they say they are, you know, this is an actual thing. And so Ichigo, probably a little bit hesitant, but he's like, okay. So that starts up Ichigo's training and everything like that. I kind of went on into a greater detail with that, with like Riruka, Giriko's, Yukio's video, Tsukishima's video. So I'm not going to go into great detail involving everything of that. The entire time, Ginjou seems to be, you know, kind of a, not super stoic. He has a sense of humor. There's a few funny moments, like whenever he used Cross of Scaffold to show Ichigo, he breaks one of the floor tiles, and, you know, off in the background, Giriko's like, yeah, you're gonna pay for that. You just damaged the floor. And he's like, damn it, Giriko, I'm showing the kid that we have magic powers here. Quit worrying about the damn floor. Whatever, you're gonna fix it. I'm like, fine, whatever. Take it out of my bar tab, I guess, whatever. Anyway, so, you know, for the most part, Ginjou's there assisting Ichigo. And then to even lay it on even thicker, when we have Tsukishima starting to show up and mentally mess with everybody that Ichigo knows about, including his family, plus the other execution members, who's the only other person that Ichigo can turn to trust? That's right, Ginjou. Ginjou shows up and he swears like, oh my god, Kiriko and Riruka and Yukio, they all attacked me, Ichigo. And he's like, yeah, Ginjou, I know. My family, my friends, they all, he's like, yeah, I know. Tsukishima's messing with all of us. Are we gonna be okay? I don't know, man. We gotta get out of here. So, at that point, you're like, okay, all right, Tsukishima, definitely the villain. By the way, I completely fell for this, 100%. Like, at the beginning of the arc, I was a little bit like, okay, is this guy the villain? But by this point, when we got to the moment where Tsukishima was just indiscriminately going around and just like, book of the end, book of the end, book of the end, all of Ichigo's friends and family, I was like, yeah, Tsukishima's the main villain, Ginjou's an ally, I got this. So I fell for it, hook, line, sinker, easy. So, it eventually all comes to a head where they go into Tsukishima's really cool rural mansion, his rural country pad, and he's just like, hey, I live here, check it out. Yeah, okay. So they go in, and then even then, Ginjou and Ichigo, they fight together. They fight alongside one another against the other FULLBRINGERS and stuff. Ginjou even, like, destroys part of the stairs, so he's like, okay, Ichigo, your friends can't get up here. Go crazy! Ichigo goes into his FULLBRING, his, like, Kamen Rider Super Sentai, slices off Tsukishima's arm. Orihime and Chad show up. They're working with Tsukishima now. Their minds have been altered, and it's like, oh no, what are we going to do? And then right when it's like, okay, Ginjou's there, he's trying to help out Ichigo, and then shing! Tsukishima cuts Ginjou, and then he drops. And then Ichigo's like, no, Ginjou, you're the only ally I have left! Question. Just a question. I'm curious. Because it might have been mentioned, right? You know, I've reread the beginning of this arc. I didn't reread the ending of it because I felt like, you know, from the other videos and just from my memory, I could be good enough. But after everything kind of hit the fan with Tsukishima, after, like, Karin and Yuzu and Keigo and Mizuru and Tatsuki and everybody's mind has been messed with that, why didn't Ichigo go to Uehara's place? Just a question. Or why didn't he try to find his dad? Because I'm just saying, like, okay, this is clearly not something that, like, this isn't like regular hypnotist. A traveling hypnotist has changed my friends and family's memories. You know, this is clearly some FULLBRINGERS Soul Society hollow bullshit going on here, right? Why not go to freaking Uehara's place or try to find your dad or something? I don't know if Ichigo attempted to do that, but I don't think he did. You know, at least try to give him a call, like, Dad, you need to help me! It's like, your call cannot be forwarded because his mailbox is full. Damn it, Dad! Delete your damn messages! I need your help! Sorry, Ichigo, I'm at the bar. Glug, glug, you know, okay, but I don't know. Maybe that's, I don't know. But Ginjou gets sliced, and then that's where, I mean, shit has kind of already hit the fan, but that's when the fan gets flipped on, like, turbo speed, okay? Because we find out, this whole time, Ginjou was actually the mastermind. What? That's right. Tsukishima was working with him, along with all the other members of Execution. He's actually been a substitute Shinigami the whole time that despises the Soul Society for what they did to him. And he really uses Ichigo's newly formed powers to regain his old Shinigami powers. And so he gets a really badass outfit. He's still got the jacket and everything. He's still got the fur collar jacket, but he's got like ribs, like skull armor all over him. His sword takes the appearance like it's got skeletons and stuff. Yo, it looks pretty badass. And then Ginjou's like, yeah, I was the first substitute Shinigami. Ginjou Kugo. Bring it on, Ichigo. But then again, of course, I mean, Ichigo had a moment where he was probably just gonna pass out, but then Rukia shows up, squee, and then, you know, Renji's there, Ikaku's there, Byakuya's there, Kenpachi's there, and he's just like, alright, everybody, let's shut this shit down, you know, okay. It's been fun, but I think it's time to finish this up here. Kenpachi, Shing, Byakuya, ha, Toshiro, freeze, Ikaku, bam! You know, everybody does their thing, you know, all the FULLBRINGERS get taken down, Renji just freaking just BAM! Right in Jackie's stomach, so that drops her. So, you know, it all kind of gets resolved pretty quickly, but you feel like, yeah, you know, if they went to Uehara's place, they might have been able to resolve this quicker. I don't know. But here's one of the major faults with the FULLBRINGER arc, and that's just, and it might have just been a situation with timing, like Kubo was like, all right, I gotta end this arc, you know, this was not meant to be a very long arc, this was meant to be an arc to introduce these characters and get Ichigo's powers back, to lead into the final arc of the series, which is the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, of course, which is way longer than this. The FULLBRINGER arc, I believe, was chapter 424 all the way to 479. So that was about almost 60 chapters or so, like 55 chapters, something like that. So we gotta hurry up and we gotta get to the final arc, right? So when Ichigo and Ginjou are talking, I mean, Uryu's there as well, but, you know, whatever. Ichigo and Ginjou are talking, and they're trying to figure out, like, Ginjou, of course, like, you know, trying to convince Ichigo to come, like, come to the dark side, Ichigo. We have cookies. You know, basically, Ginjou's, like, I mean, you gotta understand his logic here. He's like, Ichigo, you gotta understand, you're a 17-year-old kid. You were 15 years old when you got basically drafted into the Shinigami army. You know, but by the way, I mean, like, yeah, you wanted to save your friends and family. That's why you took on the powers and the mantle of this and everything. But you don't really understand what you signed up for, right? You know, this combat pass that you've been carrying around that Ukitake gave you? Oh, yeah, combat pass. It'll allow you to turn into the Shinigami. Yeah, has this thing ever done anything worthy of anything at some point, other than being able to turn you into a Shinigami? This thing apparently is supposed to give you the authority of a substitute, and Ichigo flashes back to when he showed this to Kuromadani, and he was just like, yeah, I'm a substitute. This is my official badge. And Kuromadani is just like, what badge? I've never heard of that. Ichigo's like, damn, this thing is useless. So just like, it's clearly not a badge of authority. Like Ginjou says straight up, like that, you've never been able to use it like that. That is not what that thing is for. And, you know, it can alert him when there's hollows, and it allows him to go into a Shinigami. But he's like, the true purpose of this thing is a tracking device. It's a tracking device. It lets the Soul Society know exactly where you are and exactly what you're doing. They can listen in on whatever you're doing at any time. All right? And so the one that masterminded this whole thing was Jushiro Ukitake, captain of the 13th Division. And at this point in the story arc, when it's already been revealed that Ginjou was the villain the whole time, and I fell for that, and I'm falling for this too. I'm like, is Ukitake a villain? What? I mean, we didn't really know much about the dude. I mean, yeah, Rukia trusts him and everything, but we don't really know much about Ukitake in the grand scheme of things. So that got me thinking on that. Of course, Ukitake's not a bad guy, but you never know. But, you know, like, Ichigo's response to that is very, I mean, it's a very logical response as well. He's like, well, you know, I didn't know that was happening, but Ukitake is clearly smarter than I am, so if he wanted to do something like that, he could have. You know, Ichigo didn't really give off the impression that he was upset by it or anything. It's just like, you know, Ukitake's a smart dude, and maybe Ichigo being, you know, he's like, well, maybe they might be doing something like that, but he's like, he's not as upset as Ginjou was. And this leads to a bit of the problem. It's like, is that the only reason Ginjou was mad at the Soul Society? Is that the reason he defected? Is that the reason that... And I mean, understandably, it's just like, what, you've been tracking my every movements? You know everything I do? Screw you people! I'm out of here! And that's the reason he defected? I mean, I can understand being mad at that, but Ginjou had a lot of hatred for the Shinigami, like a lot of it. There's definitely more to this story. Like, even at that point, I'm like, there's more to this. Has to be. Right? And there is, which is in the Can't For Your Own World novel, because we don't really get a lot of Ginjou in the final arc. Maybe Kubo planned on revealing more of this in the final arc, you know, because he set up Ginjou and Tsukishima to be present, and it's just, we didn't get a lot of screen time with them, right? But at any rate, we have the final epic battle between Ichigo and Ginjou. Ginjou goes into his Bankai, which gives him even more skull power. And of course, he's got Ichigo's abilities too, so he also has Getsuga and all that stuff. Ichigo goes into his, you know, FULLBRING upgraded Bankai with like the X's and the straps and everything. And he like the Razor Tensa, and they start slashing. That's like the last episode of the Bleach anime. And it's, that's the last episode. It's the last episode where Ichigo's fighting him. And then you got the Hell verse, like, ho desato I cannot speak Latin. I don't think it's Latin, but it's just like they're speaking like it's the Hellverse soundtrack in the background, right? And so maybe it's Italian, I don't know. And then the final clash, and then like Ichigo, if it was me, if it was you that came first instead of me, would you end up like I did? And Ichigo just like, I mean, the animation is beautiful. You know, Ichigo takes a sword and just shing slices him, and Ginjou's sword gets split in half, and he's like, ah! And Ichigo cuts him down again, and he falls, and he dies. Ichigo had to kill Ginjou. He kills him. He's dead. This is Ginjou who, yes, he did have FULLBRING powers. Yes, he did have Shinigami powers, but he was a substitute, just like Ichigo. Ginjou was human. Ichigo had to kill him. He died. Okay? So Ichigo kills Ginjou. He's on the ground. He's thinking about it for like one last moment. Like that's where they have the thought of like, if I came after you, would you have tried to help me? And then he dies. And the last moment of this arc is actually it's really sad all around. I mean, Giriko's also dead. Jackie and Yukio kind of go their separate ways. Jackie loses her Fullbring in the process. Riruka decides to just leave. And then you have Ginjou dying, and then his soul, of course, goes to the Soul Society, but they also bring his body to the Soul Society. And originally we assumed this was just for, like, Mayuri to, like, tinker with it. Like, ah, yes, a Fullbringer, interesting. That's also revealed in Can't For Your Own World. We'll get to that in a moment. But Ichigo goes all the way to the Soul Society just to ask the head captain, like, I don't really care about anything. Like, I don't care if you guys have been watching me. You know, the government already does that, basically. I don't care. But I want to bring Ginjou back, his body back with me. It's his body. He was a substitute. He's a human. I had to kill him. I'm the one that had to put him down. You know, just give me this much. And Yamamoto decides to grant his request. And so that's actually how the anime ends, with, you know, bringing Ichigo bringing Ginjou's body back, stepping through the Senkaimon, saying goodbye to everybody. And it's a lot more emotional in the anime because it's the last episode. For now, anyway. I can't believe the Bleach anime is finally coming back. It's like, I know that's been, like, the news since, like, you know, March, but even so now, even like 5 months later, I'm still like, that's actually happening. But at any rate, yeah. So they bring his body back, and, you know, we have like a ending out monologue from Riruka and everything. And yeah, we see Ginjou a few more times during the 1,000 Year Blood War arc, but it's nothing substantial. You know, Ginjou himself doesn't really contribute much. You know, we see like the back of him during when like he's training at Kukaku's, and then later on, he shows up with Tsukishima and gives Ichigo some words of wisdom, and just that's it. You know, that's all we got from the story. So we're gonna be getting into Can't For Your Own World territory. So okay, here we go. This is a comment by a fan by the name of John Mello. And does he know Nier? I don't know. But anyway, this is from John Mello, and this is just a bulleted point list of some stuff. Okay, so Ginjou. He is a Soul King candidate, just like Ichigo, and he's part Quincy. Being a Quincy Shinigami hybrid is a requirement for becoming the Soul King. So Ginjou's part Quincy? That's interesting. How does that work? Well, he has a piece of the Soul King inside of him. Every Fullbringer has a small piece of the Fullbring. I mean, not the Fullbring, the Soul King. Soul King, Fullbring. You know, that kind of rhymes. Inside of them, hence why their mothers are attacked by hollows. Ginjou's piece is much bigger than the others, though. Okay, so this is something we find out in Can't For Your Own World. It's that the Soul King had more than just, like, the left and right arms, or the heart. Like, Harold Valkyrie was the Soul King's heart. There's actually more pieces of the Soul King, and there's like little fragments, and these fragments are inherited into random humans, you know, and these humans, like in the mother's womb, carry a fragment of the Soul King, which draws hollows to them. And when the soul pieces come in contact with Hollow Ryatsu, boom, that's when the child becomes a Fullbringer. The Hogyoku is actually an imitation of the pieces of the Soul King. So that actually makes a lot of sense. You could see Uehara trying to, like, I'm gonna make an artificial Soul King soul piece. You could see Uehara and Mayuri and Aizen with their intellect screwing around with stuff like that. Like, I'm gonna make an artificial Soul King fragment. Like, that's something you could see Uehara and Aizen messing with. Mayuri as well. Yuha, keep in mind, is also the son of the Soul King. You know, he called him his father. Yuha giving a script works the same way because Yuha is essentially giving the Stern Ritter Hogyokus with his soul fragments. So if you ever wondered, like, there's these weird powers that they have. You know, this even goes along with Orihime and Chad's weird powers, but each of the Stern Ritter had these really unique powers. Like, Asnote had that weird fear-based ability. Superstar, Maste Masculine, had the soul fragment with James, and he can always come back to life through cheering. These are very, very weird powers that don't seem to adhere. They seem more like Fullbrings than Quincy abilities, right? Well, that's because with Yuha giving out pieces of his script, or his soul, or the Soul King's soul, or these fragments, they could basically have the seeds to awaken any power that they wanted, any crazy wackadoodle ability, right? So that's where that comes from. The noble houses were collecting the Soul King fragments and the body parts for the sake of power and eugenic experiments. That would make sense, given in the enemy, the villain we have in Can't For Your Own World, and the whole thing with, like, the Soul Society being like, oh, we're gonna gather together all the Soul King fragments, and we're gonna make, like, a perfect subset of Shinigami that have Soul King power. You could see that there's definitely people in the Soul Society that would go for that. They wanted Ginjou's piece. Hence why it was requested his corpse be transferred to the Soul Society. They sent an assassin after him. The assassin killed his friends, and Ginjou killed the assassins. Okay, so just to break that down again. So Ginjou became a substitute Shinigami. I'm not really sure on the circumstances how he became a substitute. If it was the same deal with like, because Rukia knew the procedure to like give Ichigo her powers. So something might have similar have happened with Ginjou, and another Shinigami gave, him his powers, and that's how he became a substitute. But I guess the nobility in the Soul Society, who I forget this dude's name, so let me just pull it up here because I have it at reference. Tokunada Suna Yashiro. The Suna Yashiro family is one of the noble houses, and that's like the main villain of this book. So they figured out, like, oh, this Ginjou guy that is now a substitute Shinigami, he's got a fragment of the Soul King in him. Send assassins after him, kill him, bring him back, so we can, like, use this as, like, a fragment, so we have that. However, Ginjou killed his assassins. Oh, the assassins killed his friends first, and then Ginjou killed the assassins, and for revenge. However, Tokunada managed to paint the picture to Ukitake, like, Ukitake, Ginjou, that substitute Soul Reaper, he killed all these people just because we were watching him. And Ukitake was like, what? And so Tokunada was really the one playing the field, just kind of like how Tokunada sort of screwed over Kaname Tozen. He kind of screwed over Ginjou and Ukitake as well in this regard, making them think that they were enemies, right? So that's the reason why in this book, just from the little bit I've read of this so far, Ginjou despises Ukitake, because he thinks Ukitake was the one that like sent the assassins specifically to kill his friends, when in reality it was Tokunada that was orchestrating this whole mess. So that's the real reason Ginjou is upset, not because they were just observing him, but because they slaughtered his friends. I mean, that's a good enough reason to be pissed off, right? Let's see here. Ginjou is about as strong as Byakuya after his training in the Royal Realm and Yoruichi, if not stronger, so that's crazy. He fights Grimmjow and Zombie Candace in the novel and technically defeats Tokunada. His form in the fight against Ichigo is his version of what Ichigo did against Yuha. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. And then after Ginjou learns the truth, he bonds with Shunsui over Ukitake's death. Shunsui offers him to visit Ukitake's grave with him and drink some sake. Ginjou accepts. Okay, so that's the situation with Ginjou in the novels. Like I said, we'll get to that when they get released. Well, I'll read them when they get released in English. But that at least seems to give us a lot more closure on his character. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, he's just like, this is how Bleach goes. Aizen is the villain for the majority. After the Soul Society arc, it's Aizen. Aizen's defeated. Then Ginjou, and then he's gone. Yeah, nobody cares about Ginjou. He's gone. Yuha. Now, at least, it's like Ginjou has more of a character. There's more development for him. He's more important to the story. He wasn't just some random no-name guy that's like, I'm the villain now, Ichigo. Okay, bye, I'm gone. There's a story here. There's a lot more to unpack here with his character. It's unfortunate that couldn't be in the manga, but we have an anime coming out, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just saying. We got a whole anime coming out. All of the Can't Fear Your Own World novels are out in Japan. The entire manga's finished. If you want to include this, prime real estate, that's all I'm saying, right? I really hope they do include, you can't include, because this takes place after the war. Maybe if they want to do the entirety of the war arc and then include this, like they continue the anime, like the anime keeps going even after Ichigo defeats Yuha, they just cover this. I'd be okay with that. But if they want to include a little bit more like bits and pieces of Ginjou's past and more scenes with him in this, like that scene where we see him at Kukaku, instead of just being a scene where Kukaku's like, hey, you guys keep training, and then, Ganju's there and he's like, oh yeah, sis, no worry, and you just see Giriko, Tsukishima, and Ginjou, you can actually have them turn around and actually talk and be like, yeah, why we're here, or what we're doing, stuff like that. So I look forward to the anime, and I look forward to see what they do with Ginjou's character and with Can't Fear Your Own World. But I say it before, I'll say it again. Dude's got style. Dude's got style. And a cross necklace, which looks badass. All right, so that's Ginjou's video. Next time, we'll be talking about the last Fullbringer on our list. We're going to be talking about Jackie Tristan and her Dati Butsu. So catch back here then, and then also I'll probably be doing the Burn the Witch chapter discussion. I'll be talking about that Sunday. So thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. Later. Cross of Scaffold. Pop. Yeah. Then slices Aizen down, Aizen gets sealed, gets thrown in Mugen. Everything seems to be copacetic. I mean, yeah, Ichigo loses his Shinigami powers, that kind of... No! Barry! Barry, are you okay, buddy? All right, we've had an accident on camera, guys. We've had a major accident here today. We might have to call off today's video. I think I might have to call the hospital. Barry, are you okay, man? Are you okay, buddy? I think you're okay. I think you're okay. I don't know if my mouse is okay. Oh, yeah, Barry took a big chunk out of my mouse. Okay. Well, you're gonna be okay, buddy. You're gonna be okay. Oh, man. All right, well, that's gonna go in the blooper reel.